I'm an Irish female, and this happened back in 2007, when I was in my mid-20s. Back then I loved going to clubs and dancing the night away. One particular night, I went out with some friends, which included my cousin Frank. We went to a nightclub, had some drinks, and danced to Daft Punk's One More Time, as well as other popular music at the time. I wasn't living in this town at the time, so I arranged to stay at Frank's house. We had the fridge stocked with beer for when we got back and planned on getting wasted. We probably left the club at around 1 a.m. and got a taxi to his house. Back at Frank's house, we spent a few hours listening to Led Zeppelin, Nirvana with a bit of Metallica thrown in for good measure. My cousin was in a rock band and loved the classics. At around 3 a.m., Frank's bandmate, Jack, called and asked if we can come over and stay. He had been clubbing at a different location and needed somewhere to crash. Frank lived alone in a 3-bedroom house, and being a single guy, he hosted a few wild parties over the years. Frank told him no problem. He can come over, but explained we were having a quiet night. In other words, not to bring anyone else. Jack came over and seemed super friendly. Being the drummer of the band, he looked exactly like what I expected. Long hair, Zeppelin t-shirt, and ripped jeans. His behavior changed not long after arriving. He was super animated, and I don't know, just on a different buzz. He seemed drugged on something, and hey, as long as he enjoys himself, who am I to judge? At one stage, he started playing air drums, and continued with that for ages. During one of the air drum solos, I asked him something, and he didn't answer. I kinda nudged him, very lightly, but just to get his attention. Jack went crazy, and started shouting at me to never interrupt him when he was playing drums. Drums? Sorry, did he really think he was playing real ones? Anyway, this pissed me off. I didn't like the aggression. Frank said, Relax, man. There's no need to shout. Jack replied, No one should interrupt me when I'm in the zone, man. No one. Me and Frank eye-rolled and carried on chatting, drinking, and ignoring him. The atmosphere changed after that, and after a short time, I went to bed. I don't know how long after, but I was awoken from a deep sleep. I heard this breathing sound in my room. Still in a drunken slumber, it took me a few minutes to register that the noise sounded like someone inhaling. Someone was in my bed, with a bunch of my hair in his hand, sniffing it. I froze, then said, What the fuck are you doing? Jack replied, Relax. I'm just smelling your hair. I'm not gonna do anything. Well, adrenaline coursed through me, but I was stuck to the bed with fear, and the room was pitch black. I shouted, Frank! At the top of my voice. And in speedy time, he ran in the room, turned on the light, only to find Jack in my bed, holding a handful of my hair. He said, It's not what it looks like, bud. I was only smelling it. I was sleeping facing the door, so could see Frank. I dared not to look behind me to see Jack, but his voice sounded like that of a child that knows he's done something wrong, and is about to get in trouble. Frank lost it. Told him to get the fuck downstairs. My cousin apologized and said he did not want to kick him out of the house in the drugged up state he was in. The door had no lock, so my cousin slept in a chair in front of my bedroom door. Jack actually tried to come in again. I woke to Frank telling him to get the hell back downstairs, or he's going to kick him out of the house. Jack retreated once again. The next day he was gone by the time I woke up. But a few days later, when Frank tracked Jack down, he was told he'd been mixing drugs with alcohol, and was embarrassed by his behavior. Even though it's been years since it happened, it still gives me the creeps when I think about it. Those sniffing sounds, big, deep, slow inhales, still give me goosebumps. The band broke up not long after that, so I never had to meet him again. I was told he was a good guy, so he may have been on drugs that made him super strange. I'm just glad Frank was there, or who knows how I would have got him out of my room. Hey, this event happened to me around last summer. It was probably the scariest story of my life, and I wanted to share it so hopefully someone learns from it. Something I've realized growing up, year by year, is that this world can be an amazing place, but it is filled with some super sick people. And unfortunately, I've seen that side of the world firsthand. I'm a very social person, and love the opportunity to hang out with friends whenever. I'm also the type of person who's always looking for the next big thing. I guess I should tell you, I was an 18-year-old male at the time of this story, and have a decent-sized friend group of both boys and girls. Throughout high school, we had done a lot of crazy shit together. Being just out of high school, we wanted to do something insane together before departing for college. And we all decided to go camping in the middle of nowhere for 3 days. Fun, right? And, for some miracle, all our parents thought it'd be fine. So we had 6 people going. Me and my girlfriend, Stephanie. My friend Brandon, and his girlfriend Kaylee. And Steven and his girlfriend Sarah. We had decided to have 3 different tents for each group, for reasons you could probably guess. Being a former Boy Scout, I was aware of everything we needed to survive for 3 days. Food, water, and other essential supplies. Being rebellious teenagers, we also stocked up on plenty of booze and weed for a fun getaway. So, mid-July, we depart for a camping vacation. After hours of driving and driving down back roads, we eventually find a place that looks secluded, but not too sketchy like some horror stories. There were houses nearby, but not too close. Again, we weren't looking for a sketchy woods to camp, but unfortunately no service. I took at least an hour for everything to get set up. While the girls and Steve finished setting up the camp, Brandon and I took a look around while fetching firewood. We eventually came across a cool-looking trail. We weren't too concerned, because there were houses within a mile radius, and we assumed that those people had used the trail to hunt, which was big in this area, or animals used it. If you're wondering about our car, we drove a Honda Pilot, which was Steve's, that had plenty of room for us and our supplies. We parked the car rather close to the site, so we had eyes on the car at all times. The first night, nothing much happened. We rolled a blunt and drank a bit, and called it a night. The next day, we decided to explore the woods a bit, but Brandon and Kaylee stayed behind to watch the site and spend time together. We decided to go down a path we found earlier. Around 20 minutes down the path, Steve spots a metal fence. We approach it to find a cemetery. The cemetery looked old, but there were signs of activity there. And no, not some voodoo shit or cult, like flowers and notes left. And beyond the cemetery we saw a bigger trail that had tire tracks and half-assed parking lot for the cemetery. We ventured down the path a bit more to spot some deer, then head back because it was getting late. That night, we really partied hard because we were about to leave the next day and didn't want to return with extra beer or weed. Now this night was the polar opposite of the other night. The other night was peaceful, and we assumed the same about this night. As we began to turn in, boy, were we fucking wrong. Now, you would assume there would have been warning signs early in our trip, like a rusty knife on the path, or foot tracks around our site. No, not at all. All of us woke to a blood-curdling scream coming from Steve and Sarah's tent, as we heard the fabric being ripped. What we assumed was something sharp. I guess Steve hit the guy really hard with the flashlight, and was able to get both him and Sarah to his car. Now here's the issue. Steve's tent is the closest to the car, while the other 2 tents are closer to the trail. So, to get to Steve's car, we had to get past whatever attacked Steve and Sarah. Luckily, all our drunken selves were gone because before getting into the car, he yelled cemetery, and it clicked in my head. The trail on the other side of the cemetery. So I quickly grabbed Brandon, Kaylee, and Stephanie, and started running towards the trail. I used my phone flashlight to help see. You might think, why would you turn the flashlight on? Well, last thing I wanted to do was miss the cemetery and be lost in the woods, with the guy who attacked Steve. By the time we get to the trail, Steve and Sarah had gotten the fuck out from the site, and we could hear the guy chasing us, but from several yards behind. We were able to find the cemetery rather easily, and I hopped over the fence first. When we get over the fence, we noticed Steve had not arrived yet, so we all hid in the cemetery. Luckily to our advantage, it was pitch black by the time. I had turned the flashlight off, and we all hid in a complete silence. My heart stopped when I heard the metallic shaking, as if someone was climbing over the fence. The guy had tracked us down, probably due to the fact that Steve yelled, "Cemetery!" We all stayed still as we heard the ground crunch, as the guy took slow steps. When in fight or flight moments, you are capable of a lot more than you think, and your brain is put in some super high alert mode, or some shit. As the guy approached, I realized I had a small Swiss Army pocket knife in my pocket. As the guy's steps grew closer to me, when he was right about on top of me, I grabbed the knife and lodged it into the back of his knee. The guy tumbled to the ground, with a shriek of pain and the metallic sound as he dropped his weapon. Soon the pair of headlights came around the corner. Steve had made it. We all got up and ran towards the car. While I got up, the light gave me a glimpse of the guy. He was tall, bulky, and had the look of pure hatred in his eyes as he clutched the back of his knee, and by his side, a huge machete. I was the last one to get to the car, and even before I fully closed the door, Steve floated out of there. The girls were bawling their eyes out. We drove until the first house, where we politely knocked and asked for directions to a motel or something. It was a friendly old couple. They told us there had not been one for miles. They took us in and gave us warm food and a place to rest for the remainder of the night. In the morning, the man brought his hunting rifle with us to retrieve our stuff from the campsite. When we got there was nothing stolen, but all our tents were slashed up. The elderly woman called and made a report while we were gone, and when we got back, the officers were at their home, and we gave our statements. The officer said that there's not enough evidence to find the guy, but he promised a search. We headed home later that day. No one said a word on the way home. We were all processing what had really happened. The police unfortunately never found the guy. Yeah, college split us up a bit, but we barely talk about it as a group. It's been a year. My advice to all of you is please find a populated place to camp. I don't care if it's some Yogi Bear camp. Be in reach of help and the police. Stay safe, guys. Please. I met my stalker once last year, and would rather never do it again. She is an NYU student who doubles as a hacker. In the face of a network of hackers, think Elliot Anderson's crew on Mr. Robot. If all they wanted to do was make good people kill themselves. No joke. Just contacted the FBI about them today. I just can't really take it anymore. I mean, I can. The hackers run a sophisticated enough shadow network, probably 4chan based, and keep trying to get me to kill myself through a brutal, systematic, unending attack on me, through any and all ways. I use the internet. Yes, they are here on Reddit too. I thought I was losing it for a while. So many moments where I felt like I was in a movie, the game. All the phone messages, emails, voicemails, personal details, and shadowy masked voices. I run a tight ship with my tech. Certainly now, after a few escalated years of this shit. I should have contacted law enforcement sooner, but I always just figured I was tough, and they were a bunch of kids. Bad by me. If anyone ever notices an unending stream of almost the same faced users, though race may change, contacting them on Tinder or OkCupid, that is these bitches. If anyone feels like they are connecting to the same users over and over on chat sites, like Omegle, Free Chat Now, and all of that, them again. They love hacking these sites and bragging about it, or just showing off. It all started with me meeting a random chick on Omegle, I believe back in 2017. the one this all seemed to spin around. We became text friends. Then she ghosted me. Then she pretended to die of cancer. Very convincingly. Like, well done, Photoshop pictures of her in the hospital. Medical facts now. I was very naive back then. Eventually, she came back to life and started contacting me again under different identities. I was able to tell it was her. I was stupid and kept playing the game. I hate to lose, and I like my internet freedom. Now, here I am 3 years later. I have gotten phone calls most days since from this group. They have sent me death threats, repeatedly tried to isolate me, through such acts as deleting all my new messages received on a dating app. Literally, they just would all disappear. No likes, nothing, as if they were not happening. I tried to kill myself last winter a few times, and then decided to leave New York. So I'm staying in Boston now. Obviously, everyone has it rough with the corona pandemic. I'm just really fucking happy I never have to meet the stalker person again. I hope I never do. I stopped taking taxis about a year ago. I was 23 at the time and working as a community nurse. It was during the Christmas season, and my coworkers kept on pestering me to attend one of the yearly parties at the time. I can't say I was particularly excited. I've never really enjoyed heading out to bars, especially since I've always lived so far away. Getting home was always a stressful experience. But my partner at the time lived in the neighboring city, and he encouraged me to give it a go. Getting to know my coworkers outside of a hectic day in the healthcare system was certainly tempting. He finalized my decision by telling me he'd pay for the taxi to get home. I insisted he shouldn't, but I appreciated it. So the day I got the heels on, attended the party, and had a good time. After staying at the local we rented, my coworkers asked if I wanted to join them at a bar. I was hesitant, but confident that I would get home safe. Safety has always been a really important thing for me, and I've always been taught to take care of myself and to make reasonable decisions. At the time of the night, I've had some drinks. I'm not intoxicated, but I've enjoyed the night with my coworkers. One of my coworkers suggests heading to her place for the night and try to build a relation. I decided to go. We take the taxi and everything is fine. When I arrive at my coworker's place, however, I rethink my decision. It wasn't anything particularly wrong. I just kind of figured it would be nice to head home to my partner, so I wouldn't have to think about the travel the next day. So I tell her she won't need to stress about setting up a room for me and everything. I head back out again and call some random taxi company. I waited for a bit before I noticed a taxi driving up the sidewalk. I make the terrible decision to sit on the front seat. The man appears to not be from Norway. He's got stubble, dark hair, and dark skin. I remember he spoke with a heavy accent. The conversation starts normal. He asks where I've been and if I've enjoyed myself. After a moment, he asked if I'm Norwegian. I've got brown eyes, dark hair, and slightly tanned skin. It wasn't hard to figure, so I said no. But I was raised in Norway and considered myself to be Norwegian. It was after that the conversation started turning darker. He began talking about the Norwegian drinking culture and how women have behaved recklessly. He began referring women as whores and how they would carelessly have sex with men, regardless of their marriage and dignity. I kind of went along with the conversation. Insulting the guy was the last thing I wanted to do. A terrifying feeling of control overwhelmed me. While I wasn't intoxicated, I really didn't want him to have any suspicion that I wasn't in control of the situation. The longer the car ride continued, the more personal it got. "Where are you going?" "To my partner." "How long have you two been together?" "About a year." "Do you have sex often?" This question caught me off guard, and I kind of shrugged it off. I mumbled, "I don't really talk about that." And a mild silence overwhelmed the car. A traffic light turned red at some point during the ride, and he asked me to turn to him and come a little closer. I'm not really sure what to do at that point, but I turned to him, in which he looked into my eyes and told me that I had beautiful eyes. It was at this point that the alarms completely went off, and I was completely convinced that I was in danger. That was the moment when I slowly began to undo my heels, while the car was still in motion. I was ready to jump out of the car if I had to. It's only when I recognized the street that I managed to calm myself down, that he was, at the very least, taking me to my destination. When he finally pulls up to my partner's driveway, is when I quickly pay. My heels are already in my hand, and he does get a second to finish his sentence before I bolt out of the car barefoot, into the house frantically. My partner wakes up and asks me what happened. The next day, I spent an entire day contemplating if I should call the taxi company and complain. I questioned myself repeatedly, but then I remembered that he called me at some point of the night to ask for a specific location, and the fear of him connecting the dots that it was me that complained about him catches me. I really regret that I never called in. I remember vividly looking down at my skirt, my heels, and then my top when he was talking about women in such a degrading way, and for a moment, I almost convinced myself that I was precisely what he was talking about. I wonder what would have happened if I had been more intoxicated, if I had less control of the situation, or if I wasn't heading to my partner. A lot could have gone wrong that night. I vividly remember reading in the newspaper 3 weeks later that there had been a taxi incident where a woman had been assaulted by a taxi driver. A month prior, my friend had nearly been dragged into a taxi because the taxi driver was begging her to have sex with him. All I'm saying is stay safe out there, girls. Always have a plan to get home. This happened to me in 2016, but I was having trouble sleeping tonight, and my brain dredged this up from memories. I had recently moved back to my college town, so I can rent an apartment with a friend after a long-term relationship ended. I was doing a lot of job hunting for pretty much anything, as I was pretty desperate for income, and unsuccessful with finding work within my career field. I was using multiple job sites, but mostly Indeed, because I like their website features that help you track which jobs you've applied for, and their statuses. There were, of course, some jobs that I applied for on their own website, but I kept track. After a couple of weeks of searching, I get a call. I didn't recognize the number, and the area code wasn't familiar, but I picked it up as it might be a job prospect. A woman is on the other end, and she's saying that she's calling up to set up an interview, as I had applied for their company. The company's name was not something that I remembered applying for. While on the phone with her, I quickly pulled up Indeed on my laptop and looked up through all the jobs I had applied for. None matched. I have no idea what this job is, but don't make this apparent on the phone, as I've been job searching for weeks and am still unemployed. I ask her for the address of the building and write it down. Looking back, I can't remember the name she gave me, but what I do remember was how pushy she was into scheduling the interview for later that evening. I agreed to the interview and thanked her, but as I hung up, I got a very bad feeling. Something doesn't seem right. So I Googled the phone number, and it's not linked to a company. I Googled the address, and it's also not affiliated with a company. It's from a way outside the distance of jobs that I was applying for, almost an hour away from where I lived. I pull up Google Street View, and all I could see for the address she gave me was several smaller rundown buildings, with a highway exit in the distance. It looked desolate. I pictured myself driving there around dusk when she scheduled the interview, and I could physically feel the sensation of dread settle in me. I didn't want to go. I brought all this up to my roomie at the time. He said I might be overthinking it, but if I wasn't comfortable with it, not to go. I am so glad that I didn't go. The more time passed, the more I'm aware of just how shady it was. In hindsight, I wish that I had gone to the police, but I didn't at the time because the year prior, I hadn't had much faith in them. I had tried to get a restraining order before on an ex who was telling me to kill myself and harassing me from burner numbers. Who knows what could have happened if I had gone? It's a scary thought. I often go to bed early. As I reach 30, I'm trying to get into a routine at night. From a young age, I have always been able to control large aspects of my dreams. Flying, killing zombies, making people vanish, and swimming underwater. But this tends to come at a price. I suffer highly from sleep paralysis. I often can't move in my bed. I see shadows dart across the room. I feel heavy forces pushing against my chest. I once seen a man running around my bed, and with all my might, I jumped up and ran out of my bedroom to turn around and see no one. My fiancée Jamie has started sleeping on the couch. This is because I scream waking up in the night. The sheets are soaked with sweat and tears. I went to a medium who stated I may be a psychic myself. This made a lot of sense to me, as I saw my grandfather in a dream the night he died. I also saw my Nan in a similar dream after she passed. She warned me about testicular cancer. I'm fine, God forbid I ever get such an illness. But my friend, who I'll call Matt, found a lump. I told him about my dream. He got checked, got surgery, and is now recovering. Thanks, Nan. I'm even telling my partner things that he has never told me about his family. The clothes he was wearing the day he was taken from his mother. Phrases his grand said in life, and so on. When I wake up at night, I started saying the Lord's Prayer when I feel a presence. It does a little help. I'm not religious, I just think that we're energy. This can't be destroyed. So, if you think of how much focus energy has on religion, there must be a combined force helping me through. If enough people focus on something, it becomes stronger, hence good and bad, heaven and hell, and so on. I sleep with the TV on now, so if I'm awoke at some point, I just convince myself that it's the influence of the TV in my dream. I'm often very tired. I feel more exhausted during the day than I do at night. This has affected my work life, as the doctors think I may have psychological or neurological condition. It's proven that we only use 10 to 20% of the power in our brain. So, what if somehow I tapped into another part? A part that can sense things, predict things, and freak people out on a daily basis due to the fact that I'm always on point with analysis, psychology, etc. I find it very easy to make friends. Animal and children take to me very well. This part I love. I'm a kind-hearted man who believes in manners, etc. I live in Glasgow, so that's rare. If anyone out there could shed a little light on my situation, you take the good, you take the bad, and there you have the facts. Of Dan anyways, that's my story. That's why I can't often sleep at night. I fear what I might see. When I was 9, I went back to my home country for a vacation. My mom and I stayed at my aunt's place, as it was great fun, always. My cousin's brother, Lorenzo, had an English tutor, Charlie. Lorenzo would tell me Charlie is coming over, and he'd get amazed with my English speaking. Once Lorenzo was done with his tutoring, he went into the kitchen to join my aunt and mom. He told me not to be rude and say hi to Charlie. I went near the doorway and muttered, "Hi." Charlie smiled at me and asked me to come in and check out one of the storybooks he got Lorenzo. I loved reading, so I agreed, sitting next to me. The next thing I knew, he just stared at me. He asked, why does my hair smell so good? He literally took a big whiff. He complimented on how cute the miniskirt looked on me. 9-year-old me didn't know any better. I was polite and thanked him. He asked if I wanted to go to his home for dinner, and he'd cook delicious food for me. Thank God for my aunt, who barged in and asked me to come into the kitchen for tea. Charlie left right after. My aunt and mom asked me what happened earlier, and they've both decided they didn't want Charlie in for tutoring the same moments I was in the house. 2 years ago, I went back for a visit and asked my aunt where Charlie went after all these years. She said he ran off to a foreign country because of an issue. So, creepy tutor, let's not meet again. Hey guys, I want to thank you for listening. If you haven't yet, please consider clicking that subscribe button and bell icon to get notified of all future videos. I try to post around 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you have a story of your own you'd like featured in the channel, head over to my subreddit r/GensenOfficial. And if you want early access to my videos, head over to my Patreon, where only $1 a month gets you that, and some fun other perks. I've also got merch now over on Spreadshirt, and I also offer all my videos, my podcasts. That can be found on all major podcast services. All links will be located in the description field. I hope everyone has a good night, and remember, keep it spooky.